recording.
All right, you guys, I'm very, very, very happy to announce that we have with us today two very wonderful people from the River Life program. River Life is run out of the Institute for Advanced Study on the East Bank in the beautiful Northrop Auditorium. This is Joanne Richardson and Lori Moberg, and they work with Professor Pat Nunley. Pat could be with us today. He is in Chicago. And but these two are going to tell us wonderful things about the intersection of science, art, and play. Who am I? Oh, hi, everyone.
Hey.
The people on recording don't know that this is Tracy Fallon, right, the program coordinator for Water Resources Science. You guys, take it away.
So a note on our location in Northrop, if you come visit us, we have a service downstairs that has like coffee and food, so come visit. So my name is Joanne Richardson. This is Lori Moberg, and we are two of the three people in River Life. Tracy told you about Pat Nunley, who does offer his regrets that he couldn't be here today. When he realized he couldn't, like the look that went across his face, it was horror. He was like, oh no. So, but we are honored to be here today, and we're here to talk to you about how our work integrates with water, place, and community. And did you all see the abstract that was sent out? Okay, there was an abstract that was sent out, so I think on the flyer for the program, and it has some good information in there. So if you're ever bored on a Friday night, nothing else to do, and you're reading it, have questions, do an email. Let us know. We always love to meet with students and with faculty and community partners. We like to know everyone. So the image that you're seeing on the screen right here, this is of the Mississippi River as it goes through the Minneapolis campus, and you can see the campus on the other bank, and you can see the Washington Avenue Bridge. This is from the university's media archives, and I just really needed blue and green today. So, but I think that's Lori is going to take it away.
All right, so I would like to start the way that River Life always likes to start, which is to remind us that this is Dakota land, that our entire university is on Dakota land. And so what we have learned is that it is important to always start with the indigenous. And water has great importance for the Dakota people, and both peoples and traditions. Badote, for example, is the confluence of the Mississippi and Minnesota rivers. And it's a sacred place of origin for the Dakota. And that's just one example. So we like to start with this. This is actually a map of the hydrographical basin, of the upper Mississippi River by Nicolette. And you'll notice it's a little bit small, but you can notice that a lot of the place names on this are actually trying to render Dakota place names, which would later often be changed. So River Life tries to honor this tradition by always starting with the indigenous and remembering and respecting the Dakota people who were here and continue to be in this place and shape it. The university's strategic plan calls out the importance of the university being responsive to its location. And a key part of that is being responsive to its location on one of the great rivers of the world, so on the Mississippi River that runs through the Minneapolis campus, and in the watershed that including all the waterways around it, which includes St. Paul campus, that eventually feed into the Mississippi. So being responsive to that place. River Life is housed in the Institute for Advanced Study, which is a system-wide interdisciplinary center, and we share that commitment of River Life by doing cross-campus work, by bringing together disciplines from a variety of perspectives, across colleges, across campuses, and from the community as well. River Life is actually cited in the university strategic plan as one of the ways that the university can be responsive to its place, so we are trying hard to work with that as well. We are also in a national park, technically a National Park Service unit. The Minneapolis campus is inside the Mississippi National River and Recreation Area, which was established in 1988. MNRA is a partnership park. It owns only about 64 acres. The other 54,000 acres that are part of the recreation area are part of the campus, part of the cities around it. So that's why the partnership work partnership park. It works with a lot of the cities, with the university, and with other organizations to do its work. The park also includes the only natural waterfall on the Mississippi, which is just upstream from the Minneapolis campus, and the only gorge in the Mississippi River as well. MNRA is a way that we can also see the national level commitment to the Mississippi River, to this place and the lands of its basin. Okay. And then finally, river life looks at water as both part of biogeophysical systems as well as social systems. So the river is part of water systems that are heavily affected by urban development, but it's also part of social systems that means that not everyone in the community has equal access to the river resources, equal access to the river itself, or benefits equally from it. So it's not only a physical phenomenon, but also a social one. We explore areas of social justice and equity around water, as well as exploring what water does. So this picture here is actually from Open Rivers Issue 5, which Joanna will talk about Open Rivers in just a second, and it's from the article entitled "What It Means to Be a Partnership Park," and this is a group of people out in the Mississippi National River and Recreation Area.
Sorry, I just realized I think we forgot to introduce ourselves, so I apologize for that.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, you get very excited. So I am the digital information manager for River Life, and back in prehistory, we would have referred to that as something like a webmaster, but it's more than that and less than that these days. I don't really code. I don't really write content. But I sort of work between the people who do write content and the people who do write code and sort of help everything come together. So that's been my role with River Life for many years. My background is in geology and landscape architecture and e-learning. So it is clear that I just never could decide what to be when I grew up. And then Lori.
Sorry, you said you had introduced us, but we said our names. That's what you mean, right?
Right.
So I am technically so my title at River Life is the research coordinator, which means that I do write content and I don't do the technology pieces at all. And I am actually a PhD candidate in anthropology, working on a PhD that focuses on rivers and anti-dam protests in northern Thailand. So my connection comes from thinking about rivers as social spaces and international spaces.
And so hopefully that context will help you understand why we chose to present the different parts of this presentation and sort of take turns throughout it. So, because this next part I'm talking about is, which you can't see, there we go, it's Open Rivers. Open Rivers is our journal. It's a quarterly journal. We published it since the fall of 2015, and it came out of a grant from the John Eastler Seminar funded by the Andrew Mellon Foundation. That's it. So we hosted a Sawyer seminar funded by the Mellon Foundation, and one of the things that came out of that grant was the seed money to start this journal. That we just put out the 9th issue just a couple of weeks ago. These are the covers of the most recent 3 issues: Heritage, Open Space, Water, Grasping Water, and Innovations. I really do strongly encourage you to check this out. It is not written with a high academic tone. We have aimed for a very broad audience with this, and so for people who are super smart doing really complicated things, it's pretty easy reading. So, but our subtitle, Rethinking Water, Place, and Community, it strongly reflects not only the priorities of the journal, but also the priorities of River Life's own work itself. The journal is, we consider it to be digital first, so it is on a website, so everything is free, easy to access. It should work with your phone. If you ever find that it doesn't work with your phone, I'm the person you would tell. And we also, for each issue and each article, we have it in a downloadable PDF format. So it's really easy to just, if you really like something, to just grab a copy that you can hold in your records and then delete 10 years from now. So we tried really hard to make it beautiful, to make it really interesting, and to make it really deep. So do check it out. So as we work on the journal, we have found it's very important to us to keep it interdisciplinary and multi-sector. And by multi-sector, we are referring to involving people who are on campus and off campus, involving agency people, nonprofits, community people, and partners, and also looking at the role of education and research and activism and art, and just we're pretty much interested in everything. On this slide, you can see there are 4 items. This is from our Explore the Journal page on the website. The 2 central ones, you'll see it says here, it says the Pulse. So the Pulse is a part of the journal that we update pretty much every time we publish. We put out 2 or 3 items from other media that we think is interesting and significant, and we'd love you to have a look at. So you can see that this, one of these is talking about floods in Houston, another one is talking about vanishing islands in Louisiana Bayou. We do try and update these every single time we update the issue, and sometimes we get a little excited about something. We update it in between, too. So on the left side, you can see this is perspectives. This is an example of a column. And this is something about the legal status of rivers, because I don't know the current status, but there's at least a few rivers in the world now that have actually been granted personhood status. And this is very interesting in terms of putting a context around ways that we can protect them, and ways that they can even now legally protect themselves. The feature here on the right, Free Flowing Waters, a vision for the lower Mississippi River wilderness. This is about this really cool guy, and he's got a canoe company, and he runs, he's an outfitter, and he runs tours, and he knows the river, and that's the lower Mississippi, so intimately that he is actually has set up a foundation and is working very hard in very interesting ways to protect the river and get people on the river. So we hope that this illustrates to you some of the range of what we publish. So what's actually in an issue? Now, this is our issue 4, and I put this one up for this sort of deep dive, because this is an issue you might be particularly interested in, being from the St. Paul campus. And it's on interventions. It's on what people do to rivers and put in rivers and how that changes them. So here you can see we've got the context, we've got the a list here at the top of some features. And so our features are longer articles. They are deeper, richer, bigger, better, lots more pictures if I can possibly get my grubby little hands on it. Well, not little, but we also have a series of regular columns. Now the columns are shorter. They usually there's usually one of each kind of column per issue, though sometimes we do double them up. And the columns that we have, we've got an interview, which is generally reviewing some kind of event or installation or a book, and putting it in the context of the work that we do. We have geographies that looks at spatial aspects of water, community, and place. We have perspectives, and this is often somebody, it's speaking from, usually from an intensely personal perspective about the work they do or the work others do. And it's often in a little bit of contrast to the rest of the issue. It's often not necessarily an oppositional viewpoint, but a different viewpoint. We also have teaching and practice that talks about water, community, place, teaching and practice, kind of what it says on the tin. And the thing that we often find is when people are interested in writing for us, you can come to us with an idea, and then we can see which of these categories you might fit into. So if any of you are ever interested in writing for us, let me know. So we're actually right now, we've got a call out for submittals for a roundup that we're going to put in the next issue. These are due by the end of February. If you are interested, you take a picture of this. It's got more words on it than I typically would put on a slide. But if you take a picture, we would love to hear from each and every one of you, 200 to 300 words about the work that you do and what makes it interesting to you, especially around water. So you would email them to pdn@umn.edu. is Pat Nonnelly's email address. Or you can track us down via the website and let us know too. And then this is the URL for the journal. So, and this is another fun issue. I love this map. It's really, it harkens back to my geological soul.
Can I ask for one more just little
Please do.
frame for why we're doing this? So the next issue 10 is going to be water at UMN. So we're trying to highlight the diversity of work about water that's happening across campus and across the system campuses as well. So we have a couple of pieces from business domain as well. And so this roundup is just a way for a variety of different people who do work that has some connection with water to give us just something short about what you do, so that our audience, which includes a lot of people on campus, can see the vastness of the work that's happening here.
So this next one, mapping water stories. Now, mapping water stories, oh, thank you. That was excellent stuff I should have remembered to tell you. So pay attention to it. I joke, because it's true, she's the smart one.
Yeah, it's just that I'm more in the weeds with that issue.
I haven't had to touch it yet. So, but mapping water stories. This is a new thing for us. This is brand new. This is so brand new, I can't show it to you. So, but we are working to put together a prototype this spring. And it's even so new, I really need to look at my crib sheet here. So, and it's to create a platform, a digital platform to put together spatially defined ideas around story, environmental history, and data about water in a really richly layered, really deep map. So not just points on a map that tell a story, but also information about what are the soils there, and what's the drainage like, and what did the Nicolette map have to say. So we're aiming to draw together information from science, humanities, social science, not that that's not science, but making sure that social science is involved, and also communities, to see how these layered understandings might inform different strategies for engaging people and water. So I'm hoping that we will have a prototype that we can start to pitch to people this spring. So hopefully by next fall you might start seeing a little bit more. So this is a little preview for you guys. So the actual map that you're looking at right here is taken from a former mapping project of River Life. We have some history when it comes to trying to make stories spatial. And we started doing this in 2009, back before the technology to do this was really super easy. So I ended up doing it with spreadsheets and a website, and Google Maps came out. And so we're really excited to look at some of the new technologies that are now available to us and the new partners that we have available to us to make something really much deeper, much richer, much more accessible. So, but we are looking to make this a space where scholars and students from across the university and the community can look at the same thing, say for instance, this lovely map, and draw different conclusions from it. And this is one of my favorite maps to look at when discussing this kind of thing, because this is, quite simply, it's a segment of the Mississippi River as it goes through St. Paul. This is an area that's, intimately familiar to many of us. And it is so different here in 1916 than it is today. And a historian will see one thing. A landscape architect will see another, an anthropologist another. There's McBeal Island, it's not there anymore. This rail yard up at the top, well, that's now the Bruce Bento Nature Center. I mean, the very shape of the river is profoundly different, and it's not because of anything the river did, it's because of what we did. So, well, and the river too. But it's, we're hoping to get, some of this richness into this new project. Now, to talk about one of our other initiatives.
All right, so this is another one of the bigger projects we're working on right now. This is called the We Are Water, which we are hoping will grow into the river at our doorstep. So We Are Water is a program that's designed to help people think about water as social and storied, in addition to being scientifically studied and valued. So While people in Minnesota are increasingly aware that about 40% of our waters are impaired, We Are Water focuses on story as a way to connect people's stories and experiences to water conservation and responsibilities and taking action. So this project, We Are Water, this is a picture of the exhibit itself. The exhibit is part of a program that we are doing jointly with several state agencies, including it's primarily organized by the Minnesota Humanities Center, but the other state agencies involved include the DNR, the Pollution Control Agency, Department of Ag, among others. So there's several agencies involved. And the program involves this exhibit, which will be on campus next fall, starting in mid-October, I think October 14th, if I remember correctly. And it'll be here for about, subject to change, depending on location. So it'll be here for about 6 weeks starting next fall, and along with having the exhibit, there'll be a series of events that go with it that we're in the process of designing now. There are 8 different host sites around the state who will be hosting this. We are the first one. Several of the other sites, so University of Minnesota Crookston is hosting later in the year. Northfield is hosting one. Austin is hosting one, so it's moving around the state, and it'll be in each site for about 6 weeks. The exhibit itself has a section that is sort of focused on the state level, and then each site gets to have more specific information that's focused on a more local set of perspectives. A key part of this is focusing on absent narratives, so the voices that we don't generally hear when we think about water and water issues and what's happening with water in Minnesota. For example, as River Life likes to start with, we'll be focusing a lot on Indigenous perspectives and making sure that Indigenous perspectives are included. Part of the way that we start to hear some of these absented narratives is by including excerpts from interviews that will be conducted with people both on campus and off, all around the community. And it'll be people telling their water stories in their own voices, so there'll be listening stations where you can actually hear parts of their stories and begin to think about the ways that those connect differently to water stewardship and conservation goals. The exhibit also offers a place much like this, so this is site-specific, so a map where people can write your water story and share that and post it. And the map looks a little bit different for every site. We are still negotiating how large our space can be, but there will also be a Minnesota state map as well as a globe, a cork globe so that it can accommodate a variety of different places that people might have their water stories. For example, I often say that my water story is actually from Thailand, which doesn't fit very well in the sort of Twin Cities area map. Another way that we are working with this program the idea of it is to make water systems and concerns more visible and begin to cultivate responsibility toward water systems as well as the other people who are part of those systems. So often we don't think about water as people not having equal access or having equally benefiting, and those are often the voices that are absent. So making sure that that's a key part of it. And we are currently working on bringing the exhibit piece, finding a location for the exhibit piece, and planning the programs. So if you have ideas about programs that you think fit into the work you're already doing, if you have ideas about programs that you would like to see or that you would like to tackle, we'd love to hear your perspectives. So we have a couple of meetings coming up. Again, this is more text than usual, so feel free to snap a picture if you actually want to come to one of these. The first one is March 8th in the Crosby Seminar Room in North Auditorium, and that will be from noon to 2. There will be food, if that helps. And you can RSVP by contacting Pat directly. We'll have a registration form, it just isn't active yet, so we can get that to you when it is. And then the second one will be April 10th, and that one will be hosted at Water Bar off campus. So again, the idea for this is not just to bring people from different parts of campus together, but also to be connecting with the community. So we're trying to make sure that our events serve all of those audiences as well. And we see these 6 weeks as sort of being a jumping off point for what we're calling the river at our doorstep, which will be an additional 18 months of programming that really focuses on the river and the importance of the river to the university and the university being responsive to its location. So this is something that we are thinking about increased programming that will continue, but again, this 6 weeks is sort of the key section. It'll transition titles in part because we will no longer be partnering with the Humanities Center for that, so we'll give them back their name as it moves to other locations. Thanks. You ready?
I think so, but I wonder if we should take a moment to talk about Wolfbach.
That's all you.
Okay, sounds good. So this is, yes. You know more about it than I do. Never mind.
Oh, man.
That is great, actually. Well, never mind. We like Waterbot. There's an article about it in the most recent issue of Open Rivers. I highly recommend you check it out. It is fantastic.
And if you've been water senders, you might be in some of the pictures that are in that
Oh,
issue.
no, seriously, it's actually been a little fun. Like on Twitter, people being like, "Hey, there's a picture of me," and they're like, "We're sorry." Like Shania gave it to us, so I'm not gonna tell you things you already know. Well, okay. For those of you who haven't been to Waterbot, it is a project over in Minneapolis run by Shania Madison and Colin Klegger of the Works Progress Studio. And they had this idea a few years ago, like, what if we served people tap water, like flights of tap water, like from your hometown, from my hometown, come from Minneapolis, and see what people think of it, and use it as a jumping off point to talk about why the water is different and how that affects our lives and the way we conceive of our relationships with water. And it's just a wonderful project. And so they're typically open on Saturdays, and they do little pop-ups all over the place. And I highly recommend going. It's very interesting, and there's usually very wonderful and interesting people actually being the water tenders who pour the flights and converse with you on what you're drinking and why. So, personal disclaimer, I have well water at home. I like it. It's full of iron. So some people think it's gross. If you come to my house, you might get a flight of, what was it, tab? This is
There's likely to also be a water bar on campus, a pop-up water bar during the We Are Water 6 weeks. So keep that on your radar as well.
So if you want to volunteer again, let us know. So, but basically what we would love you guys to do is keep in touch. So we have a website, riverlifeunn.edu. Pat and I are currently going through rewriting every single page. So of course, you set the schedule and then you listen to the sound of deadlines as they fly by. So, but it is getting updated, and we're working hard to make it interesting and useful and not too much, not too little. So the best part of it, if you ask me, is River Talk, which is Pat's blog, where he just tells us things and talks about things in a really thoughtful and really engaging manner. He posts almost weekly throughout the school year, a little bit less during the summer, and I really recommend that you check that out. If you don't check that out, check out Open Rivers. This is the journal. If you have an idea for something that you might think might make a good article, if you have a visiting scholar or an event and you'd like to do a piece about it or review something or interview someone or write about your own work, we have had students. We have had undergrads, we have had graduate students, we've had PhD candidates, we've had recent graduates, we've had professors, we've had people in the community. Everyone has written for us, and we want you. So you can have a look at the website for more information, or you can contact us directly. Like I said, we're in Northrop. We have Surdix downstairs, and it's a great place for a meeting and a chat, and just as a way that we can talk about having a relationship moving forward. Pat Nunnally is the coordinator of the program. He is the point person, the best person to contact if you have ideas. That having been said, if you're a little shy or if you have something specific you want to talk to, you can always track Lori and I down very easily, and Tracy can also find us. Pat is very active on Twitter at RiverLifeUMN, and if you are also active on Twitter, I encourage you to check him out. He has interesting things to say and an interesting perspective on what other people have to say. So we would love to hear from you. And with that, are there any questions?
What are some of the ways you get the public to become aware of Riverland and open rivers? How do you, other than do demonstrations, but how do you get the public to know beforehand?
So Tracy, did you prep her with a tough question? So that's a really great question. Like, how do you cultivate an audience? So we do this, we try in a couple of different ways. One is by trying to make our work accessible. So for the people who stumble across it, it isn't full of jargon, it isn't, indistinguishable from, academic work is valuable and community work is valuable, and we try and sort of bridge that gap just with the work itself. Pat is an extraordinary people connection maker, and the best thing he does is he actually gets out there in the community. He goes to community meetings, he meets with people who organize community stuff. He's probably in the office, roughly half the time, because he's out meeting with people. He meets with people at the Park Service. He meets with people at other agencies. He attends events. Basically is far more of a people person than I think I could ever be. But he also, with every piece of work that we do, he asks the question, what could this do for the community, and how can we get the community involved in contributing to this? So and he's got an extraordinary talent for that. So Twitter is another way that is a good way of reaching people who aren't sort of in the campus networks and the agency networks. So any other thoughts on how he does that?
Yeah, so he's been doing this work with community based on community and river for about 25 years. So this is also not, so my point here is we talk a lot about relationship building, so this isn't about giving people a thing and saying, look what we made, isn't this great? It's about creating connections with people, building the relationships, and then figuring out how the work that we're doing serves them as well, so that it is an exchange and not just a sort of one-time in and out kind of thing. But he's been doing that work for a really long time, so he has a lot of really great relationships already built in the community, which helps us to think about then, of the people that he's already connected with, a lot of them are also nodes for greater networks. So the more networks we can kind of branch into because of the connections that exist and the relationships that are there, the more relationships we can keep building. That's what I would add.
And that means that when you graduate and you fly off into the world and do magical things, keep in touch, drop us an email, write us an article. We'll buy you a coffee. So, does that...
I'm also going to say we have bookmarks for the journal, which I would say the most useful thing about it is both as a bookmark if you're actually still reading paper books, but also the URL. These are actually the previous iteration of the bookmarks. The new ones are coming, but we don't have them yet. So you'll notice that the subtitle of the journal has changed, and the content on the back is quite similar, but a little bit has been updated. So feel free to take one of these anyway, obviously.
Also really pretty displayed in public areas where other people that you know can see it. Okay. So,
can you tell us a little bit about the 35W freeway collapse and how that stimulated some of this effort?
Oh, yes. Pat, you see, I'm always you're going to think, I always say, well, Pat's really the one who talks about that, but Pat actually edited a book. The bridge, the river, I can't quite remember the name of it, the river, the bridge, and the collapse or something. And it was a series of articles that he solicited from people, well, and again, this is going to be along a theme, agency people, community people and academics, people from the university community, talking about the bridge collapse and what it means to the area. So the bridge collapse, for me, the thing that I noticed was it was the bridge collapse that told people this was the Mississippi River. When it fell in, and it was on the news, and people said a bridge fell in the Mississippi River, and they didn't realize that the Mississippi River went through the Twin Cities. There were a lot of people very confused about that. They thought it was the Minnesota River because the Mississippi River is the river between Minnesota and Wisconsin, right? So that's the Mississippi, and the Minnesota River is the one that's inside Minnesota. So it made it clear that there was a lot of confusion as to which river is which in the Twin Cities area. So for the national park, in a way, to try and sort of help people understand their area more effectively, and updated the signage on the river and started putting signs on bridges through the Twin Cities area saying, basically, this is the Mississippi River. And now a lot more people know it's the Mississippi River, and almost nobody knows that it's a national park. So I think that the bridge also, it did shine a national spotlight on us, but I think it didn't focus on the beautiful relationship between the river and the city. I think it really focused on the crumbling infrastructure and the conversation, went further and ended up with the big spending bill where people were, talking about, bridges falling in, and you knew that one of the things they were thinking of was the bridge that fell in Minneapolis. And so, and I know that there was, some efforts at economic stimulus, and I really feel like that big package was really intimately connected to what happened here in the Twin Cities. Does that start to get at what you were wondering about? So, but I do recommend you check out the book by Pat Nunnally. If you want the actual name of it, let me know and I'll find it for you after. Oh,
It's called The City, the River, the Bridge, before and after the Minneapolis Bridge.
yeah, I highly recommend it. It's a good read. And I know a guy who could sign it for you too.
So we talk a lot about urban and rural divide and that whole division between us. Do your contributors focus more on urban or rural settings? I saw there was a highlighted article about the Minnesota River.
Yes.
Do you get
By Dr. Carrie Jennings.
yes? Do you get a lot of what's the focus?
So we try very hard to be open to anything. Like we would not turn down something because it was rural or turn down something because it is urban. I think the journal in general does focus somewhat on issues of people in urban centers and that effect on rivers. But I think part of that reflects just the population that we know and who have happened to write for us so far. Pat has for a long time, he described his work for a period of time as, people, cities, rivers, and, really, trying to unpick the connections between them and understand how, they work as social structures, as physical structures. And so that means we've got a lot of contacts who also think about, framing these issues in that way. But that having been said, we are super interested in the rural river, but I think it is not as well represented in our work yet. Want to write something for us? Maybe? Keep in touch.
I would say too, so rural urban is one sort of hub for that, right? Is one. We also are trying to make sure that we are not solely Minnesota focused, right? If we're talking about water and place and community broadly, that is, we try to make sure we have a balance of pieces. Initially, we were focused a little more heavily on the Mississippi River, so we tried to make sure we had things that were coming from New Orleans and other areas down the river. Some of those have had a little more rural tone, depending on where they were coming from. And we also try to make sure that we're getting some perspective, some international perspective as well. A lot of different pieces to put in, but yeah, if you have an idea of how to write something that would to that divide in an interesting way. That's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was going to ask, are there other programs like this in other places in the country or that you know of where there's a focus on trying to connect people to land and water like this one is?
To our knowledge, our particular combination of things is unique. There are many, many people out there working on these same issues, but I think that our particular combination of the work we do and our location, because I actually, and I think our location that we're in the Minneapolis campus is on the Mississippi River in a national park in a major metropolitan area that is unique in the world. So Lori would know better, I think, though, if there are other institutes or research centers that are similar to us.
I knew you were going to say that. And I'm not sure. I think that there are, there are environmental centers that we've been working with. Actually, one of our issues of Open River, which issue did we have, I can't remember which issue it was, talks about, so we had someone write from UCLA, their narrative and environment lab, and I'm getting that name horribly wrong, that's not what it's called, but they have a pretty innovative lab that focuses on narrative and environmental issues. And so they wrote a piece for us about the Los Angeles River. There is, sorry, so they wrote a piece about the Los Angeles River. There's a Bethany Wiegand, who is a grad from here, actually runs an environmental, and I can't remember the name of theirs either. It's the Penn Environmental Humanities Lab or something, and they're doing things a little bit differently as well. She is a humanities scholar, and they have a boat that they, and I want to call it an art lab on the Schuylkill River that they've taken up and down and done some work with students on, and communities. So there are people who are doing related work. I think the ways that we're doing the work is all a little bit different. And I think that actually being part of the Institute for Advanced Study gives us a different kind of range of possibilities, because we are part of an institute that is system-wide, interdisciplinary, and doesn't have a sort of focus to that interdisciplinarity, and so it allows us to have a broader reach across campus. And on a global level, I'm not sure, but that's a great question and something we should look at.
Not just Minnesota, China, other places, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you think about rivers like Mekong, the people depend on it for, I mean, here you think about recreation, transportation, probably limiting how many people think they used to find grains and stuff on the river. I mean, they used to powering the grain mills and so on. But some places they depend so heavily, people depend so heavily on food, basic food stuff, like fish and so on. It seemed to me that there's an awful lot to offer. Some of these other places, you say you're in Thailand, they're probably somewhat related to some workers. So I would think that, I'm not saying there should be other places like this, but I'm surprised that there are other places that maybe have focused on this. I'm very happy to see this.
I think that there are, I appreciate that, and I think that there are organizations doing work in, for example, I worked with NGOs in Thailand who are doing great work to think about counter-knowledge frames for what water means. And so I think there's some valuable work coming there. I think the sort of, again, they don't have the opportunity to do as broad a set of, to offer as broad a set of resources or ask the kind of questions that we can, given their NGOs and their really grant dependence, they're shaping their work a little bit differently. The universities have some work that is, I think, or at least the university I worked with, I can say, has a center that focuses on sustainable development, RCSD, Regional Center for Sustainable and Social Development. And they're doing some of that work as well, but again, not focused specifically on water, then it's a different focus. It's on development, which is in Southeast Asia often means water, quite honestly, but not exclusively. So, yeah, I hope that there's a way that some of the work that we're doing, I've been trying to work with some of the people that I worked with in Thailand to get them to write pieces for us so that we can start having a conversation across. I think there's a lot of ways that the work we do here can inform other places, and a lot of ways that the work other people do in other areas of the world can inform what we do.
I do want to get another question, but like Chris asked, I didn't know. So I live in South Minneapolis and use West River Road all the time here, and I found that I use the Gorge Park and all that. What is the fact that it's a national park? What does that mean?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So if you would just look at issue 5, which issue is it? We actually have a piece in Open Rivers that talks about what it means to be a partnership park. So the MNRA, which is what we refer to the Mississippi National River Recreation Area, is a 72-mile chunk of the river that goes out as wide as like 2 or 3 miles in some sections, but it varies in width. Now, the Park Service only owns about 63, 65 acres, something like that. The rest of it is owned by people, like people with mortgages. They own their houses, and the city property and the state property, and the river is right in the middle of it. And if you want to talk about an interesting topic, who owns the river, right? So being a partnership park, it means that when there are decisions made about land use through this segment, the National Park Service is generally at the table, helping make decisions to protect the value of the area, to protect the functionality of the area, and also to sort of meet the goals of the park in terms of being a unit of the National Park Service and making it accessible to all people. One of the things that people have been working on in recent years is trying to make sure that people of color feel welcome in National Park Service units, because they've done some really good research and figured out that it's not actually a welcoming place to all people in all ways. So as you are going up and down the river, you will see that there's Father Hennepin Bluffs Park, right? It's a city park, right? I mean, it's run by the city, except it's in a national park, so it's just got this dual status. So if you buy a house, it means there's probably, I'm actually not sure what the legal thing is, but I think there's like a rider. It's like being can't think of the word. Thank you. Yeah, like an easement. I mean, there's a different legal status to the land that you would have. So it's a complex enough issue that it takes the Park Service itself a long time to talk about it. So I would love for you to read that piece, because I think that would answer a lot of your questions. But basically, it means that this place is really special, and we're really lucky.
It is issue 5, and it is issue 6 that has the other centers and other campuses that are doing similar environmental and water-related work.
So, does that help? Is that even close?
Yep.
Okay. So, did you have another question?
Sure.
Okay. Oh, excellent.
Are they going to remove the Fort Dam? Are they going to do this and that to change the rapids in the Mississippi River?
I know. So I am well known in the program for having kind of a little streak of Edward Abbey in me, and that I root a little bit too much for the river. I mean, even with the you guys know about the Atchafalaya down at the foot of the Mississippi now. Down the Mississippi is trying to jump its banks down in New Orleans, and there's this big old river control structure that's trying to keep the Mississippi on the Mississippi path, but rivers change their course periodically, and it's trying to evolve over to the Atchafalaya. So, with the question of what's going to happen with, say, the Ford Dam. So, that is a very good question. It's a very interesting question because there is a group of people who really would like to try and restore the natural character to the river. The St. Anthony Falls that is in Minneapolis is a waterfall, and it's this beautiful layer of limestone on this really crumbly junk, and the crumbly junk is eroding away. So we had to build sort of a slip dam over it to sort of hold it in place because it was going to just keep eroding its way out of the Twin Cities. So that means that below that waterfall, it really should be rapids. And Pat, in his blog 2 weeks ago, last week maybe, put up some pictures because they lowered the level, they did a drawdown on the Mississippi, and it made the rapids visible again for the first time in many years, in 2009, I think. And it made people get these romantic visions of how lovely would it be to have these rapids through the river. So there is an argument to say, well, let's try and restore it. Let's try, you can't make it the same as it was, but we could make it something similar and something new. But we've got cops that are moving upstream, and we don't quite know how to stop them. And there are people who are saying, well, we've got some barriers, some interventions in the river that could helpfully, if it can't stop them, at least slow the spread up north while we continue to try and figure out other ways to protect the river and the waters around it. But then there are other people saying, well, it kind of looks like they've already got past them, and we're finding DNA, we're finding actual, animals north of these dams. And so the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, within the last 2 years, shut down one of the dams, the locking dams at St. Anthony Falls. And it took a little while for everyone to sort of figure out exactly how that was going to work, but people don't go through there anymore. So the question is, do we remove it? And people don't know, because if the COP are going to go north anyway, this may still yet be a useful feature of the river, and is it too late? We don't know.
Also, you guys don't forget the growing team doesn't want to.
Right. Yeah.
And there's so Pat would answer with years because he would know those numbers better than I can remember. So the Ford Dam, I think, has a contract with a Canadian electrical company until 2030, I think.
Well, they're going to have to Congress, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, literally.
Yeah. And I think there's a sort of a 2-year plan for studying what's happening with the flows of the St. Anthony Falls. So I think they're still negotiating about what could happen up there. Issue 4 of the journal, Jane Mazak, who was actually a grad of the Water Research Program, she wrote a piece for that piece about that transition, and she was part of the LCCMR grant that was doing the research to see kind of where is it as it closes, so that there's some data comparison. So there's some journal information that is from people much smarter than we are.
Now, if I was a betting woman, which I am.
I have one more question. Tracy's going with it.
Okay.
I have one more question because on one of the slides we talked about the range of rivers. And I'm wondering if any rivers are winning any lawsuits. I know in Quito they're still talking lawsuits, and they have the river.
The article actually talks a lot about. It's actually from. It's one of the few pieces that we actually moved from a different publication to our own. So it's from I think something called The Conversation. And this author is writing about how complicated it actually is, despite having sort of the legal claim to personhood or to rights under the law in particular ways, enacting that is incredibly complicated, and so quite often how that's coming forth is not actually serving the river any better than before. Yeah. But it's a step in the right direction, and if the sort of legal structures can keep up with the ways around the legal structures, then maybe there would be some good to come out of that.
But I don't know the successful defense yet.
One of them in the article now, I think that it was New Zealand, and the Wangui, I think, has a better model than what's happening in I think the Wangui River in New Zealand, I think that one actually has a better model or something that has a little more potential to have more teeth than what's happening in Eckler.
Finish your betting woman. You were betting
Oh,
woman.
if I was a betting woman, I would say that the walking down at St. Anthony Falls is going to be there longer than the bullet town. That's my bet. But that they will probably survive me.
Will you go to the Muir Water? So I told a few of you about this already, but I also sit on the planning committee for this We Are Water, bringing this exhibit here to campus, and I'm representing students. And so you're going to be hearing a lot from me about needing student input. You need your ideas for ways that we can get community members involved, how we can share our stories. You will be hearing about these two meetings, and I'd love to have you join me and sit beside me and represent students from campus on this planning committee. So there'll be more. Joanne, Lori, thank you so much for covering for Pat. We appreciate it very much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.